Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Satsang. Let's make some silence first. Who am I? Thoughts cannot answer this. Neither do emotions or sensations. I am that surely that stands apart from these. The timeless, omnipresent presence. So good morning, everyone. Welcome. Just reminding everyone that we use WhatsApp as a means of communication. You can send your questions directly to me. So I'm going to answer to address the question and the situation. Good morning, Sriman. I keep steady on meditation, but during the day I see some past satsangs. And yesterday I saw one which I don't remember, and I didn't take notes. But I understood that it's better to be in a posture that doesn't disturb, to may go beyond and leave the heart to consume the stories that come through meditation. Unfortunately, the Google translation sometimes confuse me, and I don't know if that was really spoken or if I rather prefer to listen that way. Now seeing this one, why sadhana must be strict, where guidance is clear and firm, putting all the needs to a closer to a result which is closer to the ideal. Could you tell me if in any moment during your guidance in satsangs, if you have spoken that? And if I don't need to take seriously posture, if you have said that? For me, the 2 hours meditation have been very painful. It's almost comes an impulse for crying. All processes that you describe when you quote meditation, I felt every time that I meditated previously. Of course, I didn't have those clear guidance as yours, and I didn't understood why so much pain. I see the uh, things getting tight to my side since I started meditation and before your words. I'm very angry and disappointed with me because I've fallen into the trap again, the trap of human family. When I before had everything to release myself with the most tranquility, I felt again, and now at this level of consciousness, it is much, much more painful than before. And I see the webs that are being put together for me to keep me on this prison, unfortunately chosen for me. Well, first of all, what I said regarding meditation, the posture of meditation. Well, the posture is very important. Despite the new understandings and all of that of the New Age movement, posture is quite important. It is vital. What I said about the posture was because culturally we are not used to it. Sitting cross-legged in the floor, we can take up a chair so that we don't have to fight with the anatomy of the knees. But make no mistake, pain will have to be dealt with similarly. But the obstacle will be at a different level, not because of the joints, tendons, and all of that. It will be because of density being revealed through the subtle states that come through meditation. It's a different subject. But today, the vision of spirituality, we have to make a difference here in spirituality and quest for liberation. Well, they could be the same, but it is shown that they are not the same. So people that are into spirituality not necessarily mean that they are in the quest for truth. Um, like a religious person that um, has its own religion and takes care of worldly life, they are not in the quest for liberation, but spiritually minded people. And that's different. For a seeker of truth is much more than that. For the rest, well, there is no point even mentioning it. But everything, it's more or less mixed up these days. Like everybody is talking about the same, but they're not. So one thing is quest for liberation, other thing is the rest. And for those who firmly believe that they are in the quest for liberation, just a few percentage is. The rest, either it is mistaken or trying to become a seeker of truth. And for the seeker of truth, it's not a walk in the park, as it is always being brought as spiritual practices, as a means for well-being, health, and peace of mind, and all of this. It has nothing to do with that. It involves hard work, complete commitment, surrender, and the capacity to struggle continuously to liberate oneself from the claws of desires that appear from within, attachments that, how do you say this, are imposed, because they are imposed, they are not yours. But it doesn't seem to be that way. So this should be the focus and alignment, always, always working towards simplification. Simplification of desires, simplifications of everything. More humbleness, compassion, all the qualities that make you worthy. And you have to swim through your own webs of deception. And without a strong work coupling with that, it's simply not possible. People tend to say, oh, but it's too hard. It's not possible. And they say this, being naive about the nature of the quest, in a sense that they see they have a choice. And this idea, it's a complete denial of your inner desire for liberation. So in a sense, it's like there's this idea, especially through religion, of you have to do this, you have to do that. But the quest for liberation is your own interest, your own desire that arises intensely and drives you out of your old life with your goals and all of that. And this idea that I'm being pulled by takes the responsibility from your side. And this is a big mistake. Because in the end, it is your need. And it will be your frustration also. You don't know the roads, that the paths that will unfold in front of you. Like I've explained many times, your decisions unfold the path that rises in front of you. And as you make certain decisions, certain things that could unfold, they cannot, others have to come. Because if the calling is there, or even if it isn't, this is a path towards that liberation. Everything is a preparation for that. But if the calling is there, it means that's the only thing on the table. And there are many illusions in life, like you have lots of time for it, or now you don't have time enough. There's something else I need to do. There's these things to be lived, this and that. Many illusions to keep you entertained. And it is these illusions and the quest for liberation. It's the only thing that matters. So everything apart from the quest for liberation is diving into illusion. But really walking the path it is intense, it is difficult, but it is possible. And when it is not possible, it means you have failed to transform in different ways. You have failed to understand your real situation and the challenges that have come to you. And you were looking at it with a wrong vision. So, continuing to answer your question, seeing all these things you are seeing and others you already spoken, it doesn't make much of a difference because you have failed to understand and to reflect about the path you have done so far, the whys, why you have made certain decisions, and understand that for sure you had many opportunities. Just let me check one thing here. And in your situation, there are others in that situation, many. There's a spiritual calling, but the heart is divided by worldly desires, worldly values that bring worldly desires, worldly values, and spiritual ones. And there are periods where you feel attracted towards spirituality and others but the human worldly values still are underlying both scenarios. And here lies the problem. And now, the end, more or less, of life is approaching. And a lot of the complexities of life has passed. A lot of the dreams of that future of human happiness and self-importance and all these things, they have lost their glow. And you are left at the mercy of your quest for liberation. But as you had all the treasures, time, capacity to reflect, opportunities to dedicate fully to the quest for liberation, strength to endure the hardships of the path, you were too important for it. You had your own ideas, your own visions, and you failed to recognize that the quest for liberation was yours, taking time for granted. And you had a lot of time in this whatever. And you still have a little bit in front of you. Nobody knows how much, but you have lived a lot. And for sure, you had many callings, you even taught spirituality, and you had many opportunities to work seriously. But the main problem was always, and it still is, the human worldly values underlying all of that. And in moments of difficulty, these were the values always embraced instead of the spiritual ones. Of course, there are strengths that cannot be countered. And sometimes things reach a point that there's nothing you can do about it. It's not up to you, the decision. But even in those circumstances, there are decisions that are in your control. And this is why many times seekers are thrown into these situations to see, to have the opportunity to make the best decisions possible according to the circumstances. And that always means the same thing. Upholding spiritual values or reaffirming worldly values. Because, well, for sure you have done a lot, you have walked a lot, but surely the same underlying values were there. And in the situation that you find yourself today, you are still embracing worldly values. And what you only see is the emptiness of your spiritual path. You don't see the whys. You don't see direction. And you're having difficulties in redeeming yourself. And that's because redemption is not possible without acknowledging, fully understanding what went wrong. Some seekers even do acknowledge, do understand, and they find a way to redeem themselves. But that doesn't solve the question, because they can do so, even with worldly values. Yes, it is possible. And by the pain suffered through a long time of wait, for example, They can conquer the, the right to restart again. But the problem is, if these underlying values don't change, they will throw it away again. And again. And again. And again. And again. So people say, well, there's always time for that. Yes, but everything has a price. And as you are seeing at this stage, the health of the body becomes compromised. And it's not about that, because that is circumstantial. The thing is, the more time passes, the more difficult it gets. What I'm talking about, it's not a general context. It is for seekers of truth. So if you go around a challenge that comes into your way, there's no escape. There's no such thing of, well, I go or I don't go, I do or I don't do. If the calling is there, those challenges are there for a reason. Because better than no one, you know the values that are there. Or at least your higher self does. So all these challenges, you are pulling them towards your direction. But sometimes, many times, most of times, at the level of personality, there's this idea that I'm smart and I can go around this. Most of times, there's not even this idea. There's just a blindness towards following the path of least resistance. It's very, how should we say, instinctive behavior. So there's instinct, there's the unconscious, instinct, conscious, super consciousness. But usually the lowest of the lowest is driving the car. The fight or flight mode, the good or bad, sweet or bitter. Things cannot be seen. Reflection is not possible. And especially because, like I mentioned in the beginning, you don't understand your real situation. You don't understand. It's like when you're hungry and you don't eat. Well, first you will feel discomfort, of course, but then your body will get used to that if you don't eat. And you continue not eating. You will not experience more hunger. No, it just disappears after a few days. You will feel even better than you were previously because your body has a lot of mechanisms, different fuels. So it starts giving you ketones. The mind gets brighter, everything gets lighter. But eventually, if you continue in that state, well, and I'm not talking about completely stop eating, that's not the point for the example. For the example, the point is, your body starts eating itself because the body's priority is to preserve what is the most important parts. And in terms of survival, sacrificing all the rest. So first, the cell start eating the parts in itself that are leftovers of things. So it's good because they clean themselves up. And eventually, they will start eating that which is secondary before the body collapses, muscles, and so on and so on. It will preserve the organs which are most important and sacrifice the rest. And you're not feeling hungry. You have gotten used to that condition. But still, your body is eating itself, and eventually it will fall down. So this is more or less like the call for liberation. It is your need. It comes from within. And you're always looking at because you think you have time, you think you're in control. And you're always looking for a way to avoid the difficult situations. Because sometimes these difficult situations, they seem impossible to go through. Yes, they do. They are impossible for you to go through maintaining the same values that you were upholding. They are challenging you to go beyond that. That's their point. And just because you think you're smart and you can go around them, that you have all the time and all of that, it doesn't mean that you have solved the hunger and everything is fine. So, for a man that has all the riches in the world, a small possession of some kind is worthless. It's ridiculous, means nothing. For the one who has nothing, that possession could mean the world. So things are a matter of perspective, and that's what life is trying to bring to everyone. But here I talk for seekers of truth. Whatever situation you're on, in your mind, there is quest for liberation, a spiritual path, or a worldly path. It's not real like that. And life is giving you perspective. And each time you turn your back to a challenge because you decide to trust your mind at the higher level, at your higher self, you're not really diverting from that challenge. You're embracing an even bigger one, but in a situation that you will not be able to choose. So it's like cornering yourself. And eventually, that same previous challenge will be there in a way that you cannot go around, in a way that you cannot blame anyone, in a way that you cannot give excuses, in a way that's clear that's your own interest. The difference is desperation will be higher and your strengths will be lesser. But there will be a strong factor in your favor: perspective. because this idea of I have a choice, I can do this and that, it will not be there. So after all this time, you're more or less restarting things, and you're facing the difficulties that are the results of previous choices, the results of the time wasted. Everybody expects it to become easier with time. It doesn't. Some expect for the calling to disappear. It doesn't. What sometimes disappears is the feedback from the other side. The calling will remain and will torment, because those who have the calling, that is the purpose of their life. And in every situation that you find yourself, oh, now, quest for liberation is the most important. Oh, now, no, it isn't. It is something else. It doesn't go away. It doesn't change. So, in the quest for liberation, that which you need to learn, that will transform you, either you learn it by being hard, intense, courageous, or you will learn it the hard way. Either you embrace that toughness, or toughness will embrace you, will ram you over. And now you find yourself, after all these years, with more fragilities, more perspective, in a sense. Because let me tell you another thing. These cycles of, you see, unconscious life moves in cycles. So these cycles of embracing the spiritual quest and embracing the worldly life, they can be seen in many perspectives. Many perspectives. And many times, not all the time, because to make it serious, it takes a lot of work. But let's look at it as it becomes serious. And as it becomes serious, it becomes more difficult. And each time more difficult. And that is the right way. But as it becomes more difficult, well, the emptiness of worldly life that was once seemed starts to gain brighter colors, because this spiritual part is becoming more dark, more difficult, more heavy. So the mind starts to look again at the promises of worldly life that didn't seem to have any, but then become brighter and brighter. And eventually, oh, I still have time for this. Let me enjoy this part. And they go, and eventually they find that emptiness and those challenges where they have put themselves, where they have been cornered, like you are in that situation that you talked about, that you yourself created. And when those worldly promises start getting heavy and heavier and heavier, the spiritual path regains its promises, its lights, and these are just worldly values underlying the vision from both sides. and you can have perspective, you can have it all. But if those worldly values are not being challenged, it will not make a difference. So a few years ago, you came to me in satsang and asked a lot of questions, which I answered, and showing that what was misplaced. And this was an invitation for you to work that which was misplaced and put things in place. And still, after so much experience, you throw it away, convinced of the same superior ideas. Now, a few years later, here we are again. Now you say that you'll receive any guidance, you will do because you were naive, because you didn't have experience. And I look at what you bring me, and I don't see much of a difference. This perspective hasn't changed those worldly values, because the other time when you were presented to a hard teaching, and I was hard on you, yes, and that was important. When you were presented with that, instead of being humbled, you embraced arrogance again. Oh, I will choose this and that, go here and there. Good. And you made some turns in your life, and you went to that situation where you got cornered. And now, spirituality is brighter again, because the pain is intense in the promised land of illusion. But in the same way that you have escaped the difficulties of the spiritual path, you're trying to escape the difficulties of the worldly path for the same reason. And why am I saying this? To give you perspective. Because I don't doubt that those efforts behind it all, that they are not sincere. Of course they are sincere. But that's just a small part of it. It's not enough. Those values have to be replaced. And sometimes seekers are thrown into different contexts to see what they do. And any circumstance is an opportunity. Well, by logic, we can say, if you were not able to take this opportunity, probably you will reject the other one. Yes, that's the logical thing to say. But eventually, something has to change, and it will change. Either now, either in 2 months, 1 year, 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years. Eventually, it will change. So whatever time is left is very important. Nobody knows what time it has. And the more the years pass, it's not getting easier. The thing is, when you imagine that this is a will outside of you, you don't take the responsibility for the best use of your time. But either you take the responsibility or not, you will reap the fruits. No matter how difficult it is now, it's still easier then what comes next, and so on. The more you embrace of difficulties, the less you will have to deal with in the future. The less difficulties you embrace now, the more difficulties you are embracing for tomorrow. So it seems that it is bad in the sense of, because if I'm embracing difficulty, well, I'm going to go through difficulties. So it seems it's not a good deal. But if I'm not embracing difficulties, I will be cornering myself into bigger difficulties from which I will not be able to escape. So which one is the worst deal or the best deal? In theory, it is always time. In practical terms, well, so life throws a lot of opportunities. And usually, by the lack of perspective, these opportunities are thrown away. But it doesn't get easier. So, whatever difficulties you are facing now, my advice is embrace them, go through them, or else what comes next is by far worse than this. Because the call for liberation comes from within you. It's not a demand from someone or something outside of you. Can a seeker of truth pray for others, such as family members who is sick, or does this kind of attitude strengthen illusion? Or should a seeker of truth leave everything in God's hands, worry only about his own process, and not pray for others? Well, once you understand the name of the game, first you will know that everything is in God's hands. And whatever situation is coming, it's according to everyone's needs. Because there's only the quest for liberation. Either it is still a long path towards it, or apparently a short one. Doesn't matter. So, if disease comes, it is a circumstance, surely full of opportunities that, if well taken, they will bring a lot of growth. What is sickness? What is disease? And the faster you learn what you need to learn, the better. Everything else is just circumstantial. Becoming a seeker of truth, honoring the quest for truth, that is the key to liberation. And making it simple, short terms. Liberation means the end of suffering. Diving into illusion means embracing suffering. Simple equation. And let me just use this opportunity to clarify this example that I've given. The quest for well-being is still the quest for illusion, so it brings more suffering also. So well-being is a word used more commonly into spirituality. And that's opposite from quest for truth. Completely opposite. So as you are there in that moment, finding the difficulties, some of them, there will be more in front, more ahead. What I can tell to help you is try to tap in to that strength, to the acknowledgement that it is your need and the perspective that that is the most important. And if you can do that, you will have a chance to act accordingly. But understand that the time you have given, that has passed, that has been wasted, is going to increase the amount of difficulty present. And, well, a few years ago, probably not so many, you would look at this situation and you would make this reasoning. Oh, so if it's gotten more difficult, then why bother with it? Why waste time with it? Let me just give up on that and, well, do whatever is possible. Surely, a few years ago, not so many ago, this would be the answer. This moment, is that an option? I'm betting that it isn't. But the fact that it isn't an option anymore, because you are getting the perspective of the end of life, it doesn't mean that things have changed and that the work is not there to be done. And as I usually say, the level of difficulty for a seeker of truth is not the important part. The important part is that it is possible. Because for any seeker of truth in any given time, it will always seem impossible when embraced in the correct way, without the fairies and the goblins and all those mystical beings. So when things start getting serious, it becomes visible that it is very difficult, and the obstacles, the real obstacles, are your underlying values. And the biggest work is to replace them. and being thrown into difficult circumstances, it is an opportunity for you to look at these values and try to uphold something higher. Because by suffering, everybody gains an opportunity. But without transformation, you only repeat the same thing again and again until it becomes even a way of life. Worldly life, spiritual life, then go back to worldly life, go back to spiritual life, worldly life, spiritual life, and tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. So, this is my message to you. Maybe not the most expected message, but surely the most helpful one. But as always, it doesn't matter how much help you get. What matters is what you do with it. Okay. So that's it for today. Next satsang will be probably Saturday, 9:30 in the morning, Brazilian time, UTC -3. Until then, make the best use of your time. Make it real. Watch.